Okay, let's call to order then the City of Port Orchard Finance Committee of Tuesday, October 18th.
Okay.
And first thing is the review of the sales tax revenue.
So I thought for this meeting, because it's preamble to the work study session, where we can talk all about budgets. I want to try to get to the budget as soon as possible.
Right.
We'll keep it high level on the sales tax. I've already provided you guys the monthly financials. So real quick here. When we look at the sales tax, another phenomenal month. Again, we collected $707,000 in September, $104,000 over our 2021 receipts. So year to date, 12% higher than 2021 through the month of September. Overall, our budget, again, 44%. So that's less meaningful information. The 12% is actually the most relevant at this point. We have fully met our sales tax budget now, the bindings, which is phenomenal news. Then we have 3 months additional collections to come.
No, I know this. I just want to verify this. We're always 2 months in.
Yes,
Okay, that's what I'm saying. So that is actually for,
and these numbers are phenomenal.
yes,
So we had these numbers as we built the budget.
Right.
And so this windfall we're seeing is programmed in the budget you're about to see. So there aren't any additional dollars beyond the budget to grab from this.
right.
Yep, so that's a good point as we roll into this discussion tonight. REIT, I would say had a good month, not as great as 21, but we still collected $181,000. Overall for the year, we have realized, a net drop compared to 2021, but overall we're still well above our biennial budget. So that's not concerning. We're still collecting positive revenue in meaningful amounts. We're still 190% over our year-to-date budget. So again, at some point, these numbers don't mean a whole lot. Again, what means more as I'm watching the trends is where we're actually occurring.
Can we go back up to sales tax real quick? Just so we ended the year 2021 at 6.8.
Correct. Yep.
And we're trending right now at 5.7. If we go call it 5.16, so 7.3-ish.
2, 3, yeah.
Okay.
And that's a good note to make, because again, remember when we talked about building the sales tax budget, we said we're going to look at the 3-year average. And so that puts that 6.5 million to start. 2023. So just keep that in your mind, kind of what that means. So still really good news, all positive at this point as far as closing out 2022, and the revenue is really important, especially as we're trying to continue to fund our right of way acquisitions for Bay Street projects.
Okay.
So the next item, actually, I want to talk about real quick and spend a little time on this one. I do want to show you this impact fees. For this month of September, we collected $0 impact fees. So we talked a little bit about the last meeting that the park impact fees were going up. We thought there was a rush.
We got 3 months worth of housing building permits in August. And so we saw little or none.
We saw the rush, and now no building impact fees are coming. So again, nothing bad, just observation, reporting the data. We'll see how November, December kind of play out, and then how things roll into next year with different interest rates and economic conditions. So
We took in 90 building permits in August, which is 3 months worth of activity.
Then the minus 228, I assume, is because the credits.
building one reimbursement. Right. Yep. So again, as we're seeing, they're not pre-building everything, they're kind of slowing down their building to more meet demand.
Although the multifamily activity was still the pre-apps and activity is still very robust. Those just take longer to get a permit than the single family one.
Yep. And so the last report I wanted to cover on the financial side, in case you had any questions, is our cash and investment statement. Again, overall, real healthy balances. We have $70 million in our fund balance amongst all our accounts. So this is really helpful as we kind of get building the budget. We start to forecast expenditures for the remainder of the year and start with our beginning fund balances for next year. The other thing I want to mention now, because I'll bring it up a few more times, and I haven't actually had a chance to hear about this. But in our financial policy, we talked about the finance committee, finance department developing an investment policy. So as we've grown over the last few years, we never used to have these kind of healthy fund balances.
Right.
But I think we're finally at that point with these healthy fund balances where we should start looking at an investment policy and perhaps bringing in going for some investments outside of the LJP. Especially with this rate market, we could work with financial advisors to purchase some bonds and maybe increase our interest rates a little bit. Just gives us a little bit more opportunity for interest earnings. And again, in the municipal world, you're really confined to what you can invest in. So that's where the investment policy becomes into
Currently,
play.
we're doing it in the county's investment or through the state.
We are both in the county, Kitsap County Investment Pool and the LJP.
And what's interesting is this very conversation, the executive board is working through that at AWC because interest rates have been nothing and now they're starting to come up and we've got all these pool funds for the risk pool for the LNI retro program and we need to be looking, and we're
Lock
working
into
through
some interest rates.
Yeah, we're likely going to hire professional money management to help us with that.
Yeah, and that's really the drivers of the last couple of years, interest rates have been 0 to 1%.
For
So there was really
10
no
plus
value
years.
to moving money, LJP, or if it's that kind of investment pool.
Yeah, we've got one, that's just very small, for 1 year at 3.3 already.
Right.
So you can start to see,
Yeah.
increases out there.
Yeah. So, I mean, we can start laddering and do some things to lock in some long-term rates, especially if rates drop, the LJP and KCIP are short liquid pools. Which right now are doing great for us because they moved to the market a lot faster than those that locked in when it's 1%, but we might be able to take advantage of some stuff. So look for those discussions going forward next year.
No, I might be jumping ahead here, but as we get to the fund summary into the budget, we're forecasting our beginning fund balance to be 56 million.
Yeah.
So we're spending down 14 million over the next 12 to 10 weeks.
Yep. I mean, is it gonna happen? I don't know,
Okay.
right? We have to take some assumptions as far as.
When you look at the expenditures by departments, and some are kind of right on, and some are under.
Yep,
No, I know, it just seems like,
it seems like a lot, I know.
I mean, our total activity this month was basically break even. So it's just odd to see that we've been backwards by 14 million.
Yeah. And so we can talk more about that in the budget, again, kind of the philosophy of going that route, of assuming everything that was budgeted is going to be expended.
When you say going backwards.
Fund balance, so right now our fund balance is 70.2 million.
Right,
And on the starting preliminary budget, we're forecasting at the beginning fund balance will be 56 million. So between now and then, a reduction of fund balance of 14 million.
And really what's happening there is we budgeted things to happen and versus rebudgeting them to happen. We're assuming things are going to happen and
Yeah, I'm just trying to look through the different, yeah, we'll get there, I'm probably
Yeah.
jumping ahead, but what fund could be, those are huge numbers in a couple of
Yeah,
months.
and then a lot of it's, capital projects that could come forward, we're monitoring, not sure. Just a couple of projects might be a budget for a purchase, so.
well, wouldn't that beginning number possibly change based on what our actuals are for this year? So.
I would
It's a target.
I would expect it to be higher.
Yeah,
At the
that's
end of the
good.
year, I didn't expect to see.
yeah, I can check off some $1 million sums very quickly from a property acquisition to a street paving project that they're paving next week. We haven't paid the contractor on. And there's more that just don't come top of mind. So
I think it's just in the philosophy of how you develop a budget.
Sure.
Yeah.
You have to plan for expenses and when you have saving, you have a bump in your fund balance. And that's what we did last time. Okay,
So your projection is really assuming that we spend everything that we plan on spending, which is
correct.
unlikely.
yes,
It's unlikely. However, the authority's there.
Yes, yes.
The potential is there. And a large part is salary benefits that will likely occur, but we do have some vacancies, right? And then the capital side, capital is really.
and we have pathway acquisitions in there that aren't gonna happen.
Right.
There's likely we're gonna get one, we're gonna knock one more out.
Or not happen this budget.
But we
the
have
next
it,
budget.
can that happen in the next budget
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's just sliding it forward.
Yeah, and that's the balancing act.
Yeah.
really trying to understand this.
So the real question is if that 56 is what number do you want to put, do you want to throw a dart at it? I'm just kidding,
No, I just, well, let's say that, in the last, we got authority for 14 million, how much of that's actually gonna get rolled into the next budget, so our fund balance will increase by the same amount.
Yes.
Right.
What we didn't execute on.
Right. Plus any upside on the revenues,
Correct.
right? I'm
Yeah.
hoping we still have upside potential.
Well, and potentially, if there's a project that we're not able to complete, this budget rolls over, the revenue goes over, but so does the expenses.
Correct.
So
Yep.
we have to make sure
It's neutral.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
And we don't,
Yeah.
okay, we're good.
We should realize some upside though in the final quarter. We projected, but things are coming in healthy and we aren't super aggressive in our projections.
So I think we'll jump into the budget now. That's good segue. And so I'm gonna start with this group, at least with the mayor's highlights. When we get to the full council, we'll go into the income statement and we'll kind of get a little more detail. But I think this is a good starting place because it does highlight all the things that we're able to fund. And again, the process we went through is the finance department developed a balanced budget. We kicked it out to the directors and the departments and asked them to, opine on what we allocated for them and identify oppages or if they needed more, and then kind of detail that out. Pretty much everything that they kicked back to us, we then attempted to fund. Again, we've had healthy balances, healthy revenues. We looked at it, said, we think we can fund these things, and if they're a real need, a real driver, then we're gonna fund anyway. So I think we only have maybe one item or two items that we're not funding in the departments kicked back to us. So the whole conversation with the departments actually went very smooth because whatever they requested, we combed over and said, hey, yeah, this is reasonable. Is there nothing outside of the norm of operations and or contracts we have coming up next year for these we've already talked about, the comp plans, all of those kind of things. They all kind of were in line with our expectations, and then thus we tried to fund better.
Did that include personnel?
And so there were, and I can speak to, I've got some notes here after.
Yeah,
If I'm jumping ahead of, just tell me.
Yeah, a little bit, and so we funded most of the equipment and one-time purchases that were asked for. There's a few things that I said, you know what, that's a want and not a need, and we didn't fund them. There's things that we added to the mid-year review. We've added some positions, and we made an effort, more than an effort. What we did do is the ongoing revenue or paying for people, and we had robust fund balances, and we made one-time equipment purchases, one-time expenditures from our cash surplus, for a better term for it, or the upside, what we realized in the economy.
Can I jump in more? And so what contracts? What contracts do we have? I'm sorry, that's the wrong way to say it. What contracts do we have coming up with in the next 2 years in the budget? Union contracts, yeah. So that's good.
They expire in 2024.
Yeah, the guild has got a 3-year deal that we just entered in, so we won't have it done, of course, when we're entering into the next, at this point in time, because it won't be expiring until January. And then so they got a 3-year deal. We did a 4-year deal with the Teamsters. So we'll be mid-cycle in the next biennial budget when we consummate the next.
My reason
When you
was
say
that
it's not the 2023 or 24, it's a 25, 26.
Correct.
And the only reason I was bringing that up was that helps with the uncertainty of having coming out of COVID and, the inflation and stuff. So that's great.
Yeah, so
It's good news.
we've locked in those contracts and we've built it into the budget, right? Which is awesome, right? Because then we're able to fund to the max of those contracts. Yeah, these inflation numbers, we're gonna hit the max, right? And the other piece, I guess I'll just bring up now since you give me the opportunity to. No, that's perfect. We did build in a 4% COLA for non-represented employees.
Because that's what the Teamsters are gonna get.
Yep, so I'll need to get direction from the council tonight if yes, go forward. That's what we've done every fiscal year. And I think if council supportive of the 4% for non-reps, then I'll just build it into this whole budget process where in years past, we did the budget and then I came back a month later and did a COLA, the non-reps as a separate process, but it's not really needed. I think the only reason.
Sometimes we didn't have a contract done.
That's why.
And so we were
Why?
wrapping up a contract and we gave a base and
That's
then
right.
we gave an ad when the contract got done.
Yeah, so if the council supported, it'd be nice to do it as one clean budget.
Mhm.
And then when we go in, we're not modifying, so it's
So that could be is the council action items
Yeah.
to add that, and that could be a recommendation from the finance, or you guys could wait until this evening when we have everybody else.
If we
We've
were
got
to,
this blue box for things for you guys to.
if we were to take a little deeper dive into that conversation, would that be eligible for executive session?
No.
I don't think so.
In dealing with personnel and wages?
If you're talking an individual maybe, but not general, like,
Performance of an individual or disciplinary. Potentially, but not wages.
quick question. Do we have a list of the wants versus the needs?
I've got a list of things here that, yeah, I'll be able to speak to
Will
that.
we get them on the
Um,
committee?
I don't know that we made a list.
There wasn't a whole lot, but we'll go over them and we can give it to you.
Yeah,
I mean,
I mean,
It was a front end loader. It was
historically, that's where we get involved, and if we want to sit with the department head and say, okay, plead your case,
Yeah.
then we make changes, so it'd be nice to know what it
Yeah.
is that they wanted.
Yeah, that's a good point.
virtually everything, and there's only a couple of exceptions.
Or
on the-
Or,
Yeah, and they're on this mid-year review list that we didn't really say no. We said not at this time.
At that point,
Yes.
Yeah, so they might be on the menu.
There's a loader, there's a,
I won't remember it. You
yeah,
tell me now,
there's
Rob.
there are two or three things I can speak to. Okay, because I remember what they are. There was back and forth on that.
So the other lead off I was like, with this budget is that we are once again meeting our financial policy targets for both our reserve funds, our stabilization funds, and our working capital targets. So we have fully funded our policy targets, which is awesome.
Great, yeah.
Because that's not concerned anymore. You just kind of look at the next piece, capital, employees, all those kind of things.
And just, I don't know if it's worth mentioning to the full council, but as we have increases, our reserves also increases, and those are funded. That's something I didn't catch till
Correct.
I got here, so.
Yep.
Yeah, that's good.
And you'll see that on the income statement, for example, like our fund 003, we're contributing another $180,000 to the fund because of our expenses increases. However, you'll know that on our enterprise funds, we currently actually don't need to make any contributions because we hit the range of the target.
See, if you look at them in your financial,
Yep.
they're all
Yeah.
pretty decent.
Yeah, we did a really good job this time and to fund them and commit to it.
Yeah.
And
They're excessive with.
yeah,
We had said, yeah.
yeah. So I mean, that's really awesome. Yeah.
That's why we did it.
Uh, So when we look at the operating budget, Rob, you want me to just keep coming through there?
Yeah.
And then you can jump in. I know you had some comments you want to make. Yeah. So we continue investing in process improvements, utilizing technology, that's both on IT department and other departments. We're looking at different software pieces. The police had several requests for radar replacement equipment, body worn cameras, weapons replacements, again, all funded. So there's a big effort to help this department there. DCD, building consultant services, that was a big expense, 200,000, I think we had in the budget for 23-24. Again, this is something that we brought to council this biennial period because they were understaffed, had more applications coming in they could handle. So we do have a current contract, which the council just approved, I think the last council meeting for an additional 140,000. So that's part of that 200,000, because it'll roll into next year, presumably. And I guess we'll just monitor to see how the building activity actually occurs.
Right.
And I do believe DCD does have a new position, which they have not filled, and they're kind of monitoring and watching as well. So they took a pause on that hiring process. They don't want to commit.
They'll do the plans
So it's
plans for
development
you.
that's gonna help them
Yeah,
get to that point of either yay or nay on position.
right. Yeah, I think they got a little bit,
We've seen it slow down and we're going, if this continues to slow down, we can get caught up. Let's not hire this person today,
Yeah,
even though it's been authorized, but it's built into this budget.
position is built into the budget. Yeah. With some additional.
We're just not, and if the exact rock star employee that we're looking for shows up, we're probably gonna hire them. that we're dragging our feet in this hiring process.
High level for a comp, do you remember what for our 21-22 biennium, what our revenue and expenses were budgeted at? Remember that, just as.
I can get it.
Be interesting just to see.
For which,
It'll depend on what
Our
period of
last
time
biennium.
you want. Because again, when we started the budget was one number, and we've amended that budget at least 10 times since
I think he's
so-
asking for the start.
the original start.
No, I would say what we ended with.
Okay.
Yeah, what we actually did, kind of what we, revenues and expenses for the last budget compared to what this one proposed is, the actuals.
And I think I actually included that in the packet and I'll have to pull up in the document. There was one preliminary budget report that had that 21, 22 comparable. So I know you guys for that before.
Okay.
So I will find that and then I can talk about it next meeting. Yeah. So the comprehensive plan, I think we have that contracted for now. It's to be comprehensive plan update. Again, that was another large dollar in DCD's budget. Office space leases, Rob, you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so we're planning on, I mean, we're getting pinched here and we're very hopeful that when land title moves out, that Shire's firm has first right to those office spaces. I'm confident that we're gonna get one of them. We'd like both of them. One of them is gonna be the police detectives and put it in there. And the other one would be probably moving IT and a couple of other employees over into that building. And then using that space, probably IT, and then we'll get in the short term, using it as a space that we displace people to as we're remodeling City Hall. And we, a wing of the building, we've got windows torn out on that next week. We're gonna move those employees somewhere else. And then at the end of the remodel, we're gonna put 6-8 employees in over there in a suite, I think, is what our plan is. And so we budgeted 50,000 for that lease, those two leases. So we planned for both of them. And we're gonna need to put TI improvements and office furniture. So we've spitballed $50,000 for office furniture to equip those spaces.
I'm sorry, how large are the spaces? Roughly, I mean, how many people can you probably?
I can get 4 to 6 comfortably, and probably more than that if we got really creative with cubicles. The police, we're probably gonna put 4 people in it. Maybe a couple of the people that are reviewing, body camera folks and that kind of stuff. So we're not sure where we're gonna put all these people at.
No, I was just wondering for when we start the remodel and, 4 to 6 is good,
Per suite.
Yep.
8 or 10 max.
Yep.
As we're going, and that'd be during the remodel. We're pigeonhole people. So go ahead.
okay, great.
Go ahead. Yeah. Go ahead. Okay. Darn it, now we're waiting.
The next item that we highlight is a asset management planning consultant and software. We've talked about this for the last, 2-3 years. And we have a asset management planning consultant on contract right now. That's actually helping us go through and develop, again, what asset management is in the city of Port Orchard, what it should be, how do we manage our assets. Mainly, it's going to be kind of what is the mission and vision of the city? What is our level of service that our citizens should expect? And how do our public works staff gear up to meet that level of service? And what trade-offs are there that we need to make council and the mayor aware of? That, level of service can be an A for everything because there's a cost to it. There's an offsetting cost.
Right.
So it's finally put some structure around decision-making using data to address our assets and doing it in a thoughtful way. So I'm really happy to have the consultant on board to bring that kind of level of expertise to actually talk about it in a different way. Not just go replace a pipe, but what is the city really doing holistically managing your assets? How are you communicating? Do you really want to replace that pipe or is that the right pipe to replace? Do you have another need somewhere else? So we put some more money in to continue that work, to get a complete planning document. And at some point in the biennium, then we'll use this new developed plan and strategy and kind of hopefully embed into the culture of public works and finance and the mayor's office. This is how we manage assets of the city and for our citizens. And then we'll search for a tool, which is the software program to help us do that. Help us look.
It's kind of like our pavement management system where we had somebody come in and survey all of our streets and tell us, you know, the condition, all of them, and this is a tool like that, but it's citywide to manage the pipes in the ground and road conditions and help us.
Hopefully it's gonna allow us to be more proactive.
Proactive.
Yeah, well, and making sure that things aren't being done emotionally, but from a data-driven decision.
Yep. Yeah, so that's, again, I think that's a big step for the city. And as a consultant system, so as well, and I'm glad we didn't rush down by software.
How much do you have for that?
We probably have 100,000 for the consultant and probably 100,000 for the software. But I will pull that from.
Well, and the software is a mid-year review item, I think. Isn't it?
No, we have it included.
We do have it
Yeah.
in the second half of the
Yeah.
plan.
We think it's not gonna actually happen until 2024 or later in the year. Because again, I think they gotta be prepared to tell the software vendor what their needs are, right? And have the data available. Otherwise, the software vendor, at least in our experience, software vendors come in, they wanna get the job done, do the tool and kind of move on.
Either that or they're gonna be scope creep, charges a
Exactly.
fortune to do what we should have done in advance.
Right, so we're trying to do as much of the upfront work, having the plan laid out, having the data available, ready to tell them what our needs are.
Don't know if this is, it came up, I think, last year from the chief, and that was where he was looking for some type of
Yeah, and
evaluation.
I denied that,
I remember that.
that request, and I denied it again,
Okay,
and I don't need a consultant to tell us that, you know, and you guys can choose the funding. Yeah, when we've got bicycle patrols out on the street, when our marine patrol is out consistently, because we have enough bodies to do that, and we're proactively policing our community and not just chasing calls, then we've got enough people. Okay, I know we don't have enough people, and it's gonna cost me almost the cost of a person to do a report to tell me we don't have enough.
I was just curious if that
So-
request had come up again.
Yeah, it did.
Thanks.
The other problem is you bring it in, now you get something that's gonna hold our feet to the fire. How come you do this?
Just curious.
So the other big ask in this budget is water metering improvements. So we've talked about this, at least I've tried to raise this, that I think the city should move towards smart meters. Bremerton does it, Paulsbo does it, Gig Harbor does it. A lot of the cities do it and it allows you to monitor your water consumption from City Hall. So we can turn off water, know if there's a leak, consumption, allows us not to have crews going up from house to house to house. to
Read
house.
meters.
Especially as we're growing. So different technology solutions. It can be in a truck where they're driving by and you're picking up radio reads from each house rather than going out to the front. But it's gonna be a lot more efficient. Otherwise, we're gonna have to hire more people, especially as we continue to grow our housing base. Over
Crazy
the
to
next
think that
25
we're
years.
still literally touching every meter to read it every month.
Yeah, it takes 2 weeks. to do
And,
it.
I know.
this is the change in our public works director. Our prior public works director wanted to go out and physically touch all those assets, because he says that's how we find leaks. Well, we can find leaks.
Right.
Because our software tells us, Sean, your meter's spinning wild,
Yeah.
you know, we'll dispatch somebody out there to go look at it.
Fully concur.
Yeah, so that will be a big asset, because it's gonna be a big asset.
So is what you're planning, is that the capital improvement then, replacing the meters?
Yes.
Yeah, and it's gonna be a slow, we're gonna look at, we put, I think, $500,000 in for the project right now. And we're gonna look at the technologies available, what do we have currently that we can reuse, is there an adaptation to the current technology, and for those new developments, then we just put the new technology in, or just something that's kind of full there. So it's gonna
The
be,
retrofitting part is where
It's gonna be an ongoing,
yes,
it'll take,
gonna be
10 to
the-
15 years.
The burning of step systems out of
yes.
Berwick Woods.
yeah, it's gonna be a process, but we pay a lot for meters now. I mean, we pay like $80,000 to $100,000 every time we press an order, and like, why are we buying these old meters that aren't smart, don't deliver the data information you need now? Why not start making,
Do we know enough about the meters, and this is more curiosity, to just go out and unscrew and screw in a new one, or is there gonna also be infrastructure necessary to make them communicate?
In the, I would say, 80s development forward, the plumbing We'll make it very easy. In the older areas of the town, and so in the older areas of the town, I got a new water line a few years back, and so I got a new meter, okay, when they were in doing that. There are places where not, a majority of the city, I would say 75–80% of it, it's a wand and we touch it, and we just touch that little hub. There's still a fraction of the city that's very old infrastructure, very old plumbing, and we're actually flipping the cover and reading a dial.
My question is more related to the support infrastructure, is how does it communicate from the meter to City Hall?
It doesn't right now.
I understand, but what you're wanting to do was to move to something that will.
We don't
To
know.
do that, that was my question
Yeah,
earlier.
that's part
Do
of
we
the-
know enough about it to know what kind of infrastructure is gonna be needed other than unbolting and bolting a new one in?
Yeah, no, there's gonna be a work group and a study to look at the technologies out there, what else is everyone doing lessons learned from Bremerton and those have not done that process.
Yeah.
So we can kind of roll out of things. So we'll probably come back to you and say, hey, here's what we learned
Yeah.
in our evaluation, here's where we'd like to go. The last one is the storm drainage. Do you know this one, Rob, Spam implementation services? I know this had something to do, we can talk to Tony.
Tony, and this is, I can't remember what that acronym is. It has to do with our new permit requirements, and
Has to do with new
Is this
department.
another consultant or?
I don't believe so, but we'll ask, this is something we'll ask Tony about. Tony will be at the meeting tonight.
Yeah.
Question,
Yeah.
it's an acronym that escapes me.
Yeah. Okay, this
But the
last one.
budget line item is intended to, the capital improvement, is it more staffing, is it?
So it's not
It's
for
not
staffing,
capital.
it's either a capital improvement or a consultant services to get us in compliance with new regulations coming down. Yeah, is what I recall.
Which we just passed a couple weeks ago.
Yes, that's,
A higher level of scrutiny from
yes,
the DOE.
Yeah.
We had to put into our code, so this to help implement those
yeah, and
increased.
So that's on the operating side. As far as what we want to highlight, I mean, there's other things in the operations budget, but mostly it's, keep the lights on,
Yeah.
salaries, benefits. 80% of the operations budget is salary, benefits, and transfers to support capital projects. So, we're talking about the 20% here, and highlighting which were big dollars and which we thought, you guys would be interested in.
So I had to look at the numbers calculated, but do you know, talk to you had what percentage of increase are we going to experience in the new budget versus? Is it about
that was
5%, 10%?
that was Sean's question, what the base number is, and we didn't have it off the top of our head.
Yeah, and I'll bring that back to you again. I think that's a hard, at least for me, it's always a hard comparison because if we go back to the original budget, which we adopted 21-22.
Yeah,
we
not
had a
that.
very-
No, it's
Not
not the
that.
original.
Yeah.
Talking about the
What's
current approved
Yeah.
budget.
Current approved budget.
How much have we grown? How much
Yeah.
is this new budget gonna be
So
over
I can-
the currently approved?
Yeah,
And you want from operations, because capital is such,
No operations.
the operational side of the budget,
That would be
because
the
capital.
operations,
yeah,
because
not capital.
one of the issues, as you alluded to, is that. And I'm just gonna arbitrarily pick a number, the budget went up 10%, but
Yeah.
6% of that is wages and benefits.
right.
Or 7%, whatever.
Okay. Yeah, and I might have to do some follow-up this week and send out some reports to
Yeah,
the
that
council.
would be,
And I'll put together a narrative that here's the request and more.
and that would just be helpful. For me, it would be that, the budget, operating budget has gone up X%. Whatever that is.
Yeah, and I'll see if I can't break it down to, these are due to by chart, salaries
Yeah,
increases
Yeah.
or
That would
additional
be
personnel.
great because,
I got that now.
like you said, this is what it costs us to keep the lights on and off.
Yeah, and.
And before we added a body.
Yeah.
This was,
Yeah.
It was interesting. I saw the new signs for our population that were up 16,600. It's like, holy cow, I think it's, doubled since, right before we acquired.
And gas bills went up 30%.
Already went up.
all right, let's get on
Okay,
transportation.
yeah, we always like to talk about transportation.
I'd really like to talk about that second one.
Yeah, and I, John, my goal was to get us to $1 million. And remember how I was talking, we at the retreat, we talked about, and I continue to talk last year about increasing the utilities tax by 2%. And when I saw that we were able to fund with the resources that we had, $1.3 million in, and that will be, it is the, same type of, there's going to be an element of grind outs and patches and crack sealing. And then we want to pick a street, and then it'll be the street committee figuring that out, and Chris and his work group, where that street is, and do something like Lippert again in this biennium. So
Well,
that
3
provides
years
a
ago, the number was $200,000.
200,000,
Yeah.
you are spot on. We were putting $200,000 into our streets annually, and to get, my goal was to get it to $1 million, and I thought we were gonna need some additional revenue to get there, and we don't. And so we didn't move forward in this budget with those utility tax increases. We are moving forward with taxing the West Sound utility customers that live in the city of Port Orchard, because we think that's it's equity.
Equitable.
Yeah, and so we are moving, and those, that will end up in our general fund, just like all the other utility taxes. But I'm very proud
And
of
where is
it.
it going?
It's just, it's
It's just being absorbed everywhere.
it's just going into the budget, and because we.
Commonly referred to as the black hole.
Yeah, it's in the general fund. But I'm very proud of the $1.35 million that we've got in the budget. And, we got a lot of work to do out there on our streets. But this last year, I think we moved the needle. And I wish we could pave every street, and we can't afford to do that, because it's $1 million to do one little street. And, we'll get there.
Yeah, and we'll continue to look at it again, once the new year comes up and we've settled the books and.
Yeah, definitely.
But we're moving the needle.
Yeah, no, this is a great step forward. Don't get me wrong. It's just, as you know, we're so far down that we're just scratching the surface over what we need here.
Yep. So I feel like it's a good transportation preservation budget. And then couple that with our capital program. Again, I think this is a large capital budget. I think the whole budget is very large. You look at the total expenditures. But we're budgeting another $40 million in capital, and maybe I'll pause there because we can come back to that. We have a more detailed breakdown. So we'll come back to the capital. And then our ER budgeting $2.7 million for replacing 7 police SUVs, parking enforcement vehicles, public works vehicles, and some equipment. Any questions on the equipment and the
The
replacement?
question has just been from the practical accounting side of things, right? So these are all new vehicles that are going in, so that we have a formula then that will fund that over the replacement life of each asset, right?
Yes.
And so if today we've got $2 million in that fund, it's just, right, you're gonna be making additional deposits throughout the.
Yeah.
To cash flow that.
And likely we come up a little bit short because things cost more. And so we end up, when we go to make those purchases, through this budget process.
What's our monthly allocation on that now roughly, or do you do it annually or?
I can pull up the replacement payment contributions. So like you said, from the accounting perspective, each department is making a payment to
Correct.
UNR
Yep.
for their
Yep.
assets that
Yep.
they owe. And I have it in each of the detailed budgets. The balance, and then on the ER&R fund itself, you're right, those are just the cash we have in the
Okay.
fund to make the capital purchases.
Exactly.
And they're never tied dollar to dollar.
Correct,
Right.
absolutely.
I know it's not necessarily direct, but the $35 that we get for the sale of the surplus equipment, does it go into this
Yep.
fund?
Yep, anything surplus always backs to the ER&R.
With all these new.
As well as insurance funds.
So
Good point, too.
our contribution that we make on a monthly or annual, whatever, plus whatever we get for surplus.
Yep.
Yeah.
So you see this backhoe in here. And the ER&R fund said we have 2 backhoes. And we see it's got a new backhoe, replacement backhoe. The ER&R formula said to replace both of our backhoes. And I'm going, well, one of them gets used just in the yard and one's out all over on the street, You know, and the one that's out there on the street, yeah, it's tired, but it's in better condition than the one in the yard. And I said, so we put some tires and some hoses on the one that we're using every day on the street. We need one new backhoe. We have a want for 2 backhoes. And so we're gonna keep one of the backhoes, and it's gonna be the backup backhoe, and it's gonna be up at the decamp facility. The other, what I felt was a want that I denied was a front end loader for the yard. And then once the backhoe's good enough for now, it'd be nice to have a front end loader. We'd be much more efficient loading the sand, you know, in storm events. But until we've got money at mid-year, or actually we're gonna have a discussion at mid-year, and we're looking at likely the dump site, and we're doing some layout internal in this next year. And I said, when we have the new laydown yard and a second public works facility, then we need that front end loader. Right now, it's a want because we can make do with the equipment that we have. So those are some examples of things that didn't get funded in this budget.
Yeah, and just for your, Jake, I don't know if you knew this, but for the ERR fund, when we created the fund a couple of years ago, the finance committee set a policy and criteria by which when a vehicle would come up for replacement, just based on mileage and hours on the motor, special type, age of the vehicle, and or if it's is at 50% or greater as far as if there's a repair need. So if there's a vehicle that's damaged and it's going to cost us more than 50% of the remaining useful life of the vehicle, we're just going to get a new vehicle. We're not going to sink more money into it. So we go through this test, criteria test, every year, every budget cycle, and say, okay, what's being flagged? And then those are due for replacement. We then have our mechanical look at it, give it another test. Okay, is this really as bad as you think it is? And he goes, yes, it's a 30-year-old truck. It's barely alive. Or he'll say, for example, police, what we've done with some of the vehicles is the vehicle's not in bad condition. It's meeting the test as far as mileage and year or years, just meeting one of the tests. But we could actually use this vehicle in another department that doesn't have the wear and tear and the same need. So a couple of the Toyota Highlanders, we've actually shifted from the police department, and DCD ended up buying them at the replacement value rather than the brand new vehicle at $45,000, $30,000. They bought them for $12,000, whatever it was. And that's what we've added to that department. So we do manage it. We do look at the tests. We do have a mechanic go look at it, see if pass the test. And in this case, the backhoe, it went, I think it went the age test was fairly old. And then we had a discussion on it, and the mayor pointed out that it didn't get much use, and we could.
Now that we've been doing this a couple of years, do we feel like the annual contributions into these funds supports the ongoing replacement in the future? Do we need to look forward to the 25, 26, right? We've got enough going in every month. We're obviously taking a pretty huge hit this year of $4.8 million, leaving us a fund balance of $2 million.
Right. Well, we've replaced a lot of vehicles over the last couple of years.
Right.
So we're kind of
So now you get 4 to 5 years worth of revenue and no expenses on that.
And we were doing some projections too. We were looking at the next biennium and the next go round. We won't have this level of purchases because we're getting on top of.
But we bought them all the last 3 years.
Yeah.
So we'll have to catch up over the next few years.
And the test is done. But the one issue that we're chasing is the cost of the vehicles, like you already said.
Right.
The vehicles are going up.
Yeah, 20%.
Yeah. And there's nothing you do about that.
And Noah
It's not available.
Or they're not available at all.
And Noah kind of touched on, it wasn't really denied, but DCD requested, there was a couple of vehicle requests. And one for DCD, one for Public Works. And we said, well, we got these 2 Highlanders. Let's have the mechanic look at them.
Right.
We don't need to buy brand new vehicles. We've got some pretty good vehicles here. And for the we don't do pursuits and, they're gonna be just fine for, yeah.
I hope you took the lights off before you gave these.
Oh, yeah. We had it detailed, cleaned and all of that.
Are we doing anything, I can't even ask this, but are we doing anything with electric vehicles?
Oh, yeah.
Alternate.
Yeah, this budget has $150,000 for charging infrastructure at Public Works. We have 4 vehicles that you just recently,
These are all electric.
yeah, we have 4 of them that we were supposed to get this year that we didn't get, that became 2023s, and we have 4 more, so we have 8. Ford Lightning's coming, and there's 2 electric, public, one's for parking enforcement and one is for water meter reading, these little, the tiny, electric
Where are
vehicles.
you putting all these charging units at?
We're gonna, well, you missed the tour. We're gonna, along the fence out there, yeah. So along, our interim step is gonna be when you first come in the gate on the right, we're gonna get rid of that dumpster and all that stuff. We can get 8 vehicles, so 4 double charging stations. We're gonna bring in the transmission main coming into town is right on the outside of that fence. And when we come down off the pole, we think we can do all of this hard charging infrastructure for $150,000 to get us, 4 to 6 years down the road.
Okay, I'm gonna keep us moving because we got
Yeah,
15
well, I
minutes.
was gonna say, we're,
All right, so adjustments, so these are things that were not included in the department requests, and the mayor kind of came after, said, hey, I'd really like these included. One he just was speaking to was the Public Works charging stations for $150,000. Again, that's gonna be split amongst the general fund, water, sewer, storm, based on cost allocation. Some additional trash cans.
Just labor savings. If we use solar trash cans, I don't have to answer it, empty it once a week versus every day.
And then Rob, do you want to talk about this last piece? 'Cause I
Yeah.
kept it in the budget.
I think we need to have a discussion with the council out there. This is there could be an opportunity, and there just needs to be more research about, this is the $1,406. And there could be an opportunity for us to create our own, to build a permanent supportive house. I don't have all the answer, but it looks encouraging. There's a grant opportunity that I can apply for at the county for their sales tax, 1%, 1/10 of 1%. And I think we should spend 3 or 4 months exploring that possibility. And we can always come back and spend these dollars on the home improvement. And that's what this was envisioned as. But if we can pull off getting, the faith-based organizations, the service clubs, and Jay Rosapepe out helping pound nails and build us a house down in our community, we can do that for about $350,000. See, I got a number here. Yeah, $350 for a $400,000
Put that
house.
in your mid-year, that'd be a great thing just to.
Yeah, it's just, this didn't come, we had to publish a budget.
Understand.
So what I'm asking that you guys potentially is in one of your actions is potentially pull that out and that we explore this other alternative
So,
and come.
well, why couldn't we use that for the other alternative?
We could leave,
Just having the 75 there.
we could leave the 75 there and then add to it.
Yeah, add to it, and then maybe just notate it on your mid-year review, so it's not forgotten
Okay,
about.
so that would be
No one's gonna pocket 75,000 for affordable housing.
Yeah, okay, so maybe
Yeah,
your,
absolutely. Yeah.
maybe your guys' ad is that pursuing a grant and finding an alternative.
Well, that doesn't affect the budget, right?
You could
Just
do
too bad
that.
I noted it.
Okay.
Yeah.
hey, council, I found a grant, it's gonna help
Absolutely.
us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll need a grant for $250,000 from the county, and we can use $100,000. We'd have to add another 25 to this,
Great.
this pot of
Yeah,
dollars.
just add it to your mid-year review.
Where are you looking at citing this?
This would be, well, here's how this would happen is the
We better move on.
house, for the housing kits app.
Right.
Self-help project, that's just across the Lund Bridge, we would get one of the houses in that project, and we need to participate. So I'll be able
No,
to, I'll
that's
talk at
okay.
length about this tonight.
Thank you.
So I will leave it in the budget,
Yeah.
but more work to be done before we actually enter into any contracts and spend it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Next section, mayor adjustments. Do you want to go?
Certainly, so, Tony not being an engineer as our public works director, we left a hole in the engineering group. And so these are positions that I felt were needed, going forward in the next budget. So to hire a new engineer, we'd like to have 2, but we're likely gonna end up you know, based on what's out there in the world, a 1, you know, so we'll advertise it as a 1 or a 2. And then come back to you guys and true that up. The court has we've been talking to them, they've been waiting on some soft, you know, they haven't totally recovered from COVID. And we're gonna start transitioning their person that is lent out to DCD back to them full-time. And they don't need all of the FTEs that they have. So 2 points, they have got 3.6 FTEs over there, and we're gonna drop it down by 0.6, and they're comfortable with that. They're saying we can live with that.
So are
Was
these
this was
numbers in the budget then?
What's that?
Are these salaries in the budget, the forecast?
These, everything in on this list is built into this budget. Okay, so we've got a reduction of 0.6
And that still leaves one FTE.
unfilled.
Unfilled.
Yeah.
So that 0.6, a position that's not going to.
So we're
be
gonna have
filled, we're
1
not
and a
letting
half,
somebody
that
out.
1 and a half for 2-3 years, so they don't actually need it.
All right.
Get them out to 1, so
Yeah.
we said, cool, we'll claw that back.
Okay, so that 0.5 FTE office assistant over in DCD, right now, there's a 1 FTE that's in the court that's being lent out to DCD halftime. Well, the court needs that person back, which we're in the process of transitioning that back. And matter of fact, you'll be proving an agreement about that next Tuesday. So by year end, that 0.5 is gonna be back in the court 100% of the time. Nick needs clerical help. It's replacing that.
And it's part-time, 20 hours, no benefits.
Yep.
Just make sure it's clarified.
And then the FTE code enforcement, that is, we defunded for now and then added as a mid-year review item, that navigator. And we want to add a second code enforcement person because of the homelessness challenges. And if you look in the mid-year review column, we'll talk about navigator again.
Yeah, you always have to look at both of these at the same time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's why I was, yeah,
One's coming.
yeah, that's right. Police asked for 5 police officers. We funded 2.
Right.
We're gonna talk about, 1, 2, or 3 at the mid-year review, but this budget has 2 new additional police officers, 2 new police cars.
Yeah, which means that these are 2 additions to the fleet now. So the others are
Correct.
replacements, these are actually additions.
Correct.
Yeah, other pieces of equipment that we talked about that I felt were needs and not wants were the hook. It's a public works truck, it's the
transformer truck.
transformer truck, thank you, John. So it's a
An attachment for
it's
the back.
called a super single, and it gives us another one of those trucks for all of the attachments that we have. Tony can speak specifically about this. There's a trait where we're getting a new Bobcat. And the new Bobcat, the one we had wasn't quite big enough for our needs. Well, we get a bigger Bobcat, the trailer isn't big enough to tow it around, so we need a trailer to tow that. And then we've got 2 vac trucks, and we use them constantly. And so we're gonna replace, so we'll have 2 new, one's now about 4 years old. The other one is 15 years or older, and we're gonna replace that. The mechanic is saying, we're doing a lot of business with Les Schwab. We want to just buy our own tires, and he has the skills to mount tires, in particular, once we get a second mechanic hired. And then when we did this public work,
Good luck.
yeah,
You
we're
can find the
we're
tire.
gonna steal one from transit. That's what you guys did to us.
We're buying tires from Les Schwab for our buses because that's the only place that we could buy tires.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the
Okay.
supply is just not there.
Do you mount your own, John?
I'm sorry.
Do you mount your own?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's what we'll be doing, is buying tires and mounting them ourselves versus running the car up there and spending the whole day. It's Les Schwab. And then we need another set of lifts, in the shop. There are these portable lifts so that he can do his work.
Yeah, we saw that one. We toured.
Yeah, and so then I'll quickly talk about these mid-year review. These were asks. Court security, we don't have, the volume of activity isn't there yet, but it could get there yet, where we need a court security officer. Again, it'll likely be a contract with the county. We need to, once we go out to bid, we're gonna need to fund the city hall project. And I hope that we can afford to do it.
Is there any money for that project in the budget?
It's proposed as a borrowing.
I see.
Yeah, but it's not built into the budget.
And it is not, we have not
In the
put,
budget yet, so we'll
Correct.
deal with it, we'll get
Right.
bids.
and I just didn't want to
Yep.
have a number influencing the bids in the budget. And Orchard Street, so we've got contracts for all of the elements of the community center project funded, except for the plaza. And at some point next year, we need to, select and award a contract to catch up the Orchard Street Plaza to the rest of the project. I talked about the public work expansion. We're gonna do some in-house concepts and then gonna need to hire somebody to actually do design, and it'll be a phase. I think we need over time, over the next 20 years, probably 4 buildings out there. And so we want to do a layout that, we're gonna buy one building now and what does the rest of it look like? Jackie or Tony could speak to what it was for well 7. We put that on
Well, the Bay
hold.
Street Fund,
Bay Street,
so we funded design, the Bay Street funding, but did not fund construction yet.
Okay,
So we have $1 million.
Oh, yeah, I
for the Bay
skipped-
Street
yeah,
design.
that's right. That's the Bay
That's
Street.
not, that's not the
Design.
marina.
No, that is the street.
Right.
Okay, sorry, I skipped that one. Then we've got well 7. I'll need to ask Tony what that project is and why we tabled that for
is
now.
the Bay Street, is that funded with some
It is,
federal dollars?
but we don't have, and it's 2 things is they're mid-year, okay? Because the federal government hasn't passed their budget. And until they pass their budget, they aren't gonna give us an award letter.
Yeah.
So we can't program dollars that we don't have yet.
Alright.
And so that's why we've parked that. We're gonna do a water system pipe survey so that we can determine what pipe, we've got older pipes and determining in what order, and this will all feed into that asset management and the stuff, yep.
Yep.
We've got a Bay Street lift station that we need to start planning for, and that's the one that's over sitting in Titus Ford's lot, and we're likely gonna need a building and a little bigger structure.
Oh,
And so,
okay.
so it's at the other end of town over there. We want to be able to, once the fire district passes their bond, they're gonna find it, they're gonna go buy a different piece of property and likely surplus that property that's sitting in our park. We need more parking. And we'd like to buy it, but we don't, until that happens, there's nothing to, we're likely funded. But for the RCO grant for the sports courts at Givens, and that's to resurface them and strike them for pickleball, just like we did at Van Z. Until the legislature takes its action, we won't get an award letter, and it's like 125,000 is our match. Okay, so we have a grant in front of Cedar Heights, and we have construction activity there by Sydney Glen and the next phase of the Haven townhomes. And we know that we are gonna need to put a 10-inch force main for the Ruby Creek sewer lift station in the ground. We're gonna be putting in new sections of streets, and everywhere we do a new section of street, we wanna lay that force main in the ground. And so that'll be a mid-year review item, how much and where. We know it's a multi-million-dollar project to do the whole span of it. And eventually we'll get to that, but last thing we want to do is do new segments of street and then cut it up 2 or 3 years later to put a pipe in the ground. We have a car key money to do a car keyed system. It's $15,000 over in DCD. We are having performance issues with Stanley Door, who is the consultant. We're trying to get out of that contract. We don't want to award them any more work. So we're not gonna complete that work this year, and we're gonna likely need to add that back into the budget after we get through that legal process. Positions that we want to consider: additional police officer, the navigator. The permit center manager is retiring, and Nick's wanting 6 months of overlap. Noah and I chuckled and said, you might get 60 days. So but we'll work through that, and we won't, Nick's Nick wants to have some overlap. He deserves to have that overlap, but what that looks like, we don't know yet. But we'll talk about that next year. Public Works, the front counter needs some help right now. Bottom line is, I probably would have funded that if I had a place to put that body. And that's a bigger driver of that than anything. So we'll talk about that at mid-year. Accounting position, Nick, Noah, he has some bandwidth issues, and part of his challenges this year were employees out due to illness and so on and so forth. We don't know what the need is, but there are some challenges in the finance department, and we're gonna evaluate that, come back and talk to you about what that is. That is a supervisory position? Is it a entry-level position? We don't know, but there's a bandwidth issue. And then Elizabeth in HR is just knocking it out of the park. And we currently have her as the lowest HR specialist, and she is doing the work of an HR analyst. And we feel that she's a year from now she is deserving of a promotion for the work that she's doing.
This is just a minor one. I have no quibbles with it. I just remember that what a former council member says is, what does the position require, not how is the person
Yes.
performing. You know exactly who I'm talking.
And so yeah, I'll be careful how I phrase that, but
Yes,
we do. We are hiring, doing so much hiring. There is a need, and she's earned it.
I'm not debating that.
Okay,
That's how you phrase
you
it.
asked me what we didn't fund, and I've got a list here just off the top of my head. We already talked about the DCD and Public Works cars that we're reprogramming, the police study. There was a request for a stormwater tech, and I'll talk offline about why I didn't fund that one, but I think there's the ability to get more work out of the folks that we have in that division. And we have a new public works director, and I'm confident that we're going to be able to get more out of the folks we have. And there wasn't a need to add that in, the front end loader and the backhoe. So there wasn't much we didn't fund. And Noah can look back at his notes to make sure I didn't miss something off the top of my head.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think we funded most everything.
So I've got a few other notes here just to tell you guys about other things that we talked about. We have 4 left 1 retirees, they're police officers that we are required till they're in, till they pass away. We are responsible for every aspect of their health care, including long-term care. And it's estimated at $150,000 a year for each retiree to fund their long-term care needs. We've talked about that internally with HR and talking to the assistant finance director or deputy director, I guess is what we're going to call her. If we create a restricted funds for that, it makes additional reporting requirements. We don't believe that all 4 of these are going to end up in long-term care at once. And maybe none of them will, or some of them will. And we feel that we can cash flow $150,000 if we need to. That's why we have reserves, and we'll build it into future budgets as this happens. But I just wanted to make you aware of it. That's the conversation we have. We recognize we do have a liability. It's in our financial reports that we have this liability out there, and we feel we can afford to cash flow it. The public information's officer contract, the prior budget had it at 50,000. We've spent in this biennial budget about 25,000. Recognizing that the first 4 months of the biennium, we were without a consultant, and we did more work in 2022 than we did in 2021. We may need at the mid-year review to come back. If we do a bunch of outreach related to the pathway or something, we could get in a situation where we're going to need to add $5,000 or $10,000. But I wanted to fund it at what we were utilizing, not what future need may be. So I reduced the amount of that funding. We talked about the $1,406. We do have a water tower out at Paul Powers Park. Mark Dorsey started a process. We went to bid and the first time it was 650,000. We said, no way. So now we've got an engineered drawing that that goes with this and the specs on how to disassemble it. And we're hopeful we're going to get a better bid. I'm not certain we're going to, but we already awarded that contract and started that body of work. We're going to go out and get the bid. If we get a favorable bid, we may need to come back to you guys to fund that. I'm not optimistic that that's going to happen, but I just figured we already spent the money on the consultant. We need to follow it. Yeah, we need to follow through on it and go out to bid and see what, and then lastly, the Bay Street project, we have a federal grant for the design. We have the federal money from KRCC for the construction. The total cost on that project's $5.5 to 6 million. Our local need will be about $1.8 million, but that won't be until the second year of the next biennium. Just bringing it forward, making everybody aware that we've got to find a way to fund that too. In the 2025, yeah. So that is all I have. That was it.
We still have half an hour.
So we can go through a little bit of capital.
Let's do a look at it. Yeah.
So I kind of rolled this up to higher level than I have in the past. And again, we can come back to more detailed description, conversation. But again, big budget, I would say $40 million coming up here between our various funds, our general capital construction, street capital of 11 million, water, storm, sewer. So real quickly, when we look at 302, our capital construction, we have money budgeted here for community event center design work. So continue through the design phase there. Yes, but City Hall doesn't have money. $71,000, which would complete the current contract we have in place with the kind of forecast. Now, again, if they do work faster, they're remaining 3 months this year, that might not be needed next year, but it'll be done this year then. So you'll see a little bit of that as part of the art of developing the budget, right? McCormick Splash Pad, hopefully we're gonna be completing that next year.
It's in Department of Health's hands right now. We have the redesign. And come on.
And I'll note up here that I make comments to completion on these projects when I'm budgeting to complete this phase of the construction or design work. So I feel like that's good if we can pull it off. So maybe complete the splash pad. The charging stations that we talked about, 45% of that is coming out of the capital construction fund. Again, the total is 150, but the other pieces are coming from other funds. So that makes up the $2.1 million roughly for the capital construction. And I point out, John, this does not include the actual construction of City Hall.
Right.
So there's a number of items that.
Yeah.
It's probably $8 million for the City Hall project.
So when we talk about street capital construction, again, we'll start with our Bay Street pathway right away completion. Again, I'm hoping we will be able to complete all our acquisitions. $1.5 million for that. Again, with the pathway, now we're doing design and construction. And intent would be to complete that entire project next biennium.
So with
With $5
the
million.
right of way completion for the Bay Street, that 1.4, there's not a whole lot left in.
One house, 10 parking stalls, and the slivers of Tidelands.
Good.
And Randy's last little bite of relocation, which is less than $10,000.
And did that already go to council last week?
One piece of it, there's
I
two
thought you
pieces,
said
there's
okay.
another piece, there's two
There's
pieces.
still more reason, okay.
Sorry, go ahead.
No. So that takes, hopefully at the end of the biennium, we'll be all done with the pathway. Wouldn't that be amazing? Great.
Yeah.
The Bay Street, and then I hope this is helpful for you guys. It's helpful for me when we turn to track. I identify the transportation improvement plan number here at the start of each project. So tip 1.1 through 1.16. So tip 1.13, we currently have in our current budget for the Bay Street situational study, but they just haven't got going on that design project yet. So again, I'm re-budgeting the whole thing. So that might be one that.
So that's ferry terminal to the boulevard and going up the boulevard. Heading this direction, west and past.
For the path.
Yes, I knew that it's doing the concepts for the next phase of the pathway.
So should we call it Bay Street Pathways Situational Study?
It's already got it we didn't pick these names, and there's grants associated. with
Okay,
it.
so they're already in, okay.
Yeah, so
They're in
I
our
try to stay
plan.
consistent
Got
with what's in the comp plan, so they're all,
Yeah.
even though other people call them different things. Next one is tip 1.7, the Bethel Lincoln Design Construction Project that's underway. Again, ideally, we are actually completing this,
Completion, yeah.
right?
On construction next year.
So we're completing a lot next year if you
Yeah.
look at our plans, right? Salmon and Blueberry, we've talked about this, they've already started some of the design work here, but I'm budgeting the full contract because they're kind of slow to start right now.
Now that's, okay, I'm sorry.
That's Bethel phase one.
1.7 is, that's just a roundabout, right?
Those are the
Those
two
are the
roundabouts.
Two roundabout, I'm sorry, the two, yes, two roundabout, but that, I'm sorry, maybe skipping ahead. This doesn't include the 1% on here.
No,
No,
It's
it's
not
a different
that
project.
No, I know
that's revenue, these are expenditures.
yes,
And
but,
then, that project isn't funded by the 110.
right.
It's funded by grants.
No, I know that, I just, my question was, will that end up being on this list, or will that won't happen until the following mid-year?
Well, it's Bethel, salmon, blueberry.
Oh,
Design
okay,
work.
that's, okay,
Bethel phase one.
phase one, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
that's what I was looking for, was the phase
Yeah.
one.
Yeah,
That's
this
the
is-
finishing the design.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
And again, right now, we have it budgeted to come from the contributions that developers already given us, cash we have on hand, as well as some REIT funds. Again, we haven't put any of the TBD sales tax into the budget yet.
Right.
We will probably do that mid-year, once we actually start collecting some and know how much we have.
But that's phase one.
Really know how much revenue we can.
And
And
likely,
then by that time, we'll have some design done to move to the next phase.
Right,
so likely that budget amendment will look like the developer money has to be spent there.
Right,
So we
yep.
leave it alone. We'll back the readout because we can spend that other places and plan it with
Yep.
sales tax dollars.
Yep, so that would be mid-year review.
no, that's, yeah,
Yep.
that answers my question, but thank you.
The Lippert sidewalk improvement projects, that's ongoing right now.
Design is, yes. Oh, excuse me,
No,
no, that's the Lippert project.
Construction,
Yeah.
Yeah, we
we sure tore it up. if
We,
it's- it's not.
Noah is projecting here, we make, he's not sure that we'll get the work done this year. This is whether or not we fully pay the contractor. We will have, retainage and other things that we'll need to pay out. And so the funding aspect of it could trail into the first quarter.
And again,
So if that's the case, then in theory, we will have cash carryover from not expending it this year, carrying it into next year.
yeah,
This gives us make
Yeah,
sure
so
it gives
this
us.
isn't really new money, it's just,
it's reappropriated.
Yeah.
It doesn't spend.
Yeah.
It doesn't get
Change our beginning fund balance.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's why I like with the two columns
Yeah.
of balance.
Yeah.
We're just planning ahead here so that we maybe don't have to do a budget amendment.
right, in the budget, you can pay it.
We can pay the bill next year.
Right, so we have a budget now, we're good.
Yeah.
We'll see. Anyway, when we did develop the budget, that's where we were at with all these projects. We hadn't seen any invoices.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, well, I don't know what they're doing. I got to plan ahead for next plan. Pottery design and construction completion.
That's
Again,
the
we have,
complete street project by Cedar Heights.
and this is the project we've got the TIB money for.
Yes.
Yeah, so we got 625,000, I think, in TIB money already.
It's mostly paid for by a grant.
Yeah, and we already got the cash, which was offered TIB, they wrote us a check like the next day. And we're like, where did this come from? We didn't request this. So I don't know if they're trying to, their fiscal year budget, so they want the money out of their coffers dollars, which is great, I guess.
Sure.
And then we talked about the SR 116 design work. This is only the street portion of that design work, as we broke it up, it's about $1 million design project. There are portions that are from water, sewer, and storm. And so that's what this asterisk means, that this is only a portion of that project.
So it's important to know, we need to get going on this work. So we budgeted the expenditures and we paid for them with local dollars. And most of that would get corrected in a budget and then when the federal government passes the budget and awards us the grant.
Right.
Then we'll be able to reprogram those REIT dollars and other things that we've put in.
Yeah, and then that's a good point. At this point, this is all general fund dollars.
So will the grant allow us to reimburse ourselves? That's kind of like pre-award
Well,
authority.
that's kind of where I go. I haven't seen the grant. There's no grant award letter.
Yeah.
You just tell me
Generally,
there's
they
a
get real
grant, but
hinky about
until-
spending it before you get the award.
But John, in this, we haven't spent any money. This is just programming these dollars.
Well, I appreciate that, but what you were suggesting is we're gonna pay for this locally, and then when we get the grant, we're gonna pay ourselves back.
Because we have to have a balanced budget. But the federal budget should be approved before the end of the year. Should.
But are we gonna make these expenditures before the
No.
end of the year?
We are
No,
not.
and I think that's a good point, because I was talking with Public Works the other day, we are programming a lot of projects in here.
Yeah.
And with the rising costs of construction, we need to prioritize which ones we want to get first, because
Yeah.
we might find in 3 months, hey, we can't do half these projects, we gotta
Yeah.
dedicate that money
What-
to.
Yeah, what can we get done?
Right.
Moving on.
All right, moving on, water, well 11, again, we're in the design on that project. We're getting pretty close to being done with that one on the design front, and then so we'll go to construction next year.
But this is gonna be construction.
Look, completion, look.
Don't ask no any tough questions.
Do some stuff here, guys. Melcher booster station, very similar, I know they just.
Well, this is the 2-year budget.
Yes.
It's over 2 years, not just 1 year.
Yeah,
It could,
man, I would be shocked, but.
I know, I was being optimistic.
You know, just planning, gotta do it. Booster station, they just, I think signed a contract for that one as well as the low pressure station. These two, we all have loans with Public Works for those funding sources, that's 100% loan funded. Again, Bay Street designed specifically for water elements of that. We have some built-in, the roof. I'm saying it's from roof, is that right, John? Roof.
Shroud, depends on who you are.
So we have some water main replacement that needs to be done over there, and so $200,000 can be allocated for that. And then we just built in some water main replacements for 2024. Nothing specified, but there might be water main replacement needs.
Good.
Again, $10.4 million. Storm, this property purchase, I programmed because again, we don't have a purchase order at this point in time. I don't know what's gonna happen with that. I hear it's coming forward this year, we're gonna close this year, but I haven't seen anything yet. If so, we'll play the fun game, right? Buy this year, undo this, like fund balance differently. Annual preservation, this is again, just contribution dollars going for storm preservation. So we're gonna start this new approach to constantly fund water main replacements, preservation stuff, street, start getting it as a habit rather than being reactive. And
So
start
right now,
reactive.
rank of preservation is maintenance is for.
Right.
It depends you on, or is it a real?
You like those ones. All right, and then last but not least is the sewer capital construction, marine pump station. All right, this is a big one.
Yep.
This is where I say, hey, we gotta prioritize this one over all the others.
Yeah.
Depending on what happens, this money might all get sucked right back into marine. Right, so we gotta be prepared for that.
It started out at 6 million, so yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, and I didn't hear good news today about it. That was going up. Well, there goes the entire rest of the sewer budget, but we gotta stick to what's the most important project and prioritize,
That
right?
is the most important.
So. City design work, sewer main replacements for, again, this is the Bay Street design. Sewer controls, this is another public works loan, and then just some money for preservation, which I'm sure is gonna get swallowed real quick. But that is a very big capital budget.
All right. Any questions?
Any questions? Then we can end there and do it all again. And
I was gonna say, we got 11 minutes before we get to do that. If there aren't any other questions, then we are adjourned.